Yep, your eyes do not deceive you. You read that right. Paddy Pimblett has come back after his injury, and he's going to fight former interim champion, lightweight legend, holding the record for longest win streak in lightweight history, but now sadly, heavily declining Tony Ferguson. A fighter who's on a 6-fight win streak versus a fighter who's on a 6-fight losing streak. You would ask yourself, how does this make any sense at all? There's only one reason this fight is made. Build a young rising star off of a legend's name. Everybody knows Tony Ferguson is nearly out the door, whether willingly or not. If he loses a 7th in a row, that's probably going to be it for Tony Ferguson. I mean, it should be at this point. I think Tony should have retired a while ago, but he just wants to continue competing. He still wants to keep fighting. He had a fight with Bobby Green in his last one. He looked decent in the first round, and let's just be honest here, Bobby Green is a way better fighter than Paddy Pimblett right now. Maybe Paddy surpasses him in the future, but Paddy's not a young guy that people think he is, right? Paddy's 28 years old, has over 20 professional fights. He doesn't look a whole lot better out there than when I seen him before. I mean, I used to watch Paddy Pimblett when he was in Cage Warriors. I heard his name all around the place, watching his interviews and stuff like that. His striking has gotten a little bit better. His grappling's gotten a little bit better, but you would have expected a lot more over these years. Go back and watch his fights in Cage Warriors. He doesn't look that different today, and that is a bit alarming, and it's a reason why, low-key, Tony Ferguson actually has a shot at winning this. I don't favor him. I favor Paddy to win. I think his youth and his tenacity, his power, and his great submission ability should get him ahead. But he makes so many mistakes that even someone like Tony Ferguson can capitalize. Tony is still a rugged, tough veteran. He could tough his way through a lot of things. And Paddy was losing striking exchanges against Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon is not exceptional at anything he does, if we're going to be completely honest here, and he was having his way with Paddy in a lot of moments. What do you guys think? Do you think Tony, right now, is better than Jared Gordon? If I'm going to be honest, I think Jared Gordon might be a little bit better than Tony, but it's not that far apart. Tony does some things better than Jared. He also has a very long reach and a lot more power than Jared Gordon. Better submission ability too, even at this stage of his career. It's just Jared, I would say, is technically better than Tony Ferguson right now. So what that tells you is a lot of those punches that Paddy Pimblett was getting hit with by Jared would be a completely different story if he got hit the same way against Tony Ferguson. If Tony's hitting him with those kind of punches, Paddy got hit a lot to the head. Huge shots, but Jared Gordon has no knockout power. If he gets hit the same way by Tony Ferguson, we know that power's the last thing to go from an aging fighter. Paddy could be in some trouble. But at the same time, Tony could probably get lit up before he catches Paddy Pimblett. So the plan about all of this is to have Paddy Pimblett build on his star power by defeating Tony Ferguson. A lot of people know who Tony is, even the casual fans. And if Paddy goes out there and beats the legend, it will make him a bigger deal to the casual fans than he already is. But it is a big risk because Tony can actually hurt Paddy as well. And Paddy doesn't have the best kind of takedowns. He doesn't have a great wrestling game. So the means of him taking the fight to the ground is not going to be too great, even though I think he could still get it down there by some awkward scramble. I think the best scenario for Paddy is just to overwhelm Tony Ferguson right from the beginning. Drop him and then submit him. I think that's the best way. Those crazy barrages hurting Tony, getting the submission on the ground is his way to win this fight. For Tony Ferguson, he's got to go toe-to-toe with this guy. If Paddy's not being aggressive, then Tony can keep the jab on him, can put some good pressure, and be aggressive with his own striking, but not reckless. Tony cannot be reckless, right? If Tony gets reckless, he's going to get hurt. But there is something to say that even Bobby Green couldn't drop Tony Ferguson. He hit him with a lot of big shots. So we know Tony still has a decent chin. It's not as good as it used to be, but he still is able to take some shots. And I would say that Bobby Green, I don't know if he has more power than Paddy Pimblett, but he's definitely more precise with his shots. Paddy has no precision with his striking. He wings punches out there. He doesn't have great form in his punches. He leaves his chin up in the air. Very poor defense. His offense could be hard to handle because of how tenacious he is. He's so relentless with his power punches. It can overwhelm lower level opponents, but that's not really going to be a thing when he gets into like the top 10. He's going to have to rely a lot more on his grappling at that point, compared to his striking that he's doing against the guys outside the top 15. And it is so sad to say that Tony's at that state of his career where he's one of the lower level guys. You know, he's one of the guys outside the top 15. He's not one of the elites anymore. Those days are long gone. And if he goes and loses to Paddy Pimblett, I mean, if there's never a sign to retire for Tony, that would be it. If you lose to Paddy, it's over, dude. It's over, man. There's nothing left. If you can't beat Paddy, who are you going to beat? The guys that Paddy won against? Nobody wants to see that. Tony Ferguson is a guy that used to fight for belts, contenders. He used to fight top 10 guys all the time, turning into a fighter that would have to go up against Paddy Pimblett scraps. There's nothing more humiliating for Tony Ferguson at that point. He would just have to accept that he's old now, he's not the same anymore, he's completely out of his prime, and you just have to move on. But if he beats Paddy Pimblett, put him on the GOAT list, man. Put him on the Mount Rushmore of MMA. But I still think Tony should retire even if he wins. If anything, have one more fight with Jim Miller at UFC 300 and call it a career. In other news, Wonderboy versus Shavkat Rakhmonov is a thing now, which was completely unexpected, but I do respect it. I don't know why Wonderboy wanted to take this fight when Usman was calling him out. I really wonder what happened there. The only thing that makes sense is that something happened to Usman, because there's no way Wonderboy would rather fight Shavkat than Usman. Usman's the #1 contender. If Wonderboy beats him, he gets a title shot. It's a more favored fight against an aging fighter with damaged knees that can't shoot the same kind of takedowns he used to. And on the feet, he obliterates Usman. But he's going up against a young, rising contender, no decision having assassin in Shavkat Rakhmonov that could contest him in the striking somewhat. I think Wonderboy should get the better of the striking exchanges merely due to the fact that Shavkat does not move his head. Everything else when it comes to like Shavkat's offensive skills, it could be pretty threatening to Wonderboy. And then here's the other thing. Shavkat has good takedowns. He has great submissions. Shown in the Jeff Neal fight, he could submit you on the feet and he can submit you on the ground pretty easily. If the fight hits the ground, Wonderboy is done. And even on the feet, Shavkat could catch him. He has that reach advantage to work with. He's big, long, and tall, and he's pretty fast with his output. But I think Shavkat will be reaching for some of his punches, and I see Wonderboy backstepping some of those, hitting him with pull counters, and really using his hands for the most part. He doesn't want to risk too many kicks of Shavkat catching those and taking him to the ground. I think Wonderboy is going to approach this with a lot of hands, man. A lot of jabs, a lot of straight rights, maybe take the southpaw stance and shoot down the left straight instead. Because kicking a fighter who has good wrestling is one thing, let alone against a guy who's taller than you as well. When you bring your kicks upward against a taller opponent like that, it's easier for that guy to catch your kicks and take you to the ground because you have to extend them a lot more. You have to rise them higher, which creates more risk the higher the kicks go. Because the higher you throw your kicks, the more unbalanced you're going to be. And also the further the distance is to connect on the target, making the kick ultimately quote-unquote slower to get there. So I do see Wonderboy approaching this with a lot of hands, with a lot of punches, but ultimately I do see Shavkat beating him. I see him taking the fight to the ground and submitting Wonderboy. But I do respect Wonderboy for taking the challenge. I just thought that he would have fought Usman. So we got some really good fights coming up, man. When UFC 294, 295, and 296 get finalized, I'm going to go down the whole list of those cards because those 3 pay-per-view cards are looking insane right now. But they're not full yet. They're not finalized. And leave in the comments below, man, what are your guys' thoughts about all these big fights? Do you actually see Tony pulling off the big upset? Or do you think Paddy's going to win this, whether he runs through him or the fight becomes competitive and he just edges out a decision or something like that? And who do you see winning, Wonderboy or Shavkat Rakhmonov? Leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.